Hello and good morning everyone, and thank you for joining our CASB webinar today. So we are joined here by Dave Barnett from Symantec, who will be running through the webinar with you. Okay, so I'm now going to pass you over to Luke, who's just going to briefly discuss the assessments that we're offering.
Hi everyone. So just before Dave kicks off, I just wanted to run through a couple of assessments that we are able to offer you via Symantec CASB. So whilst Dave is going through his detailed slides, I'm sure he'll talk about what we can offer. But just as an outset, the first assessment that we can offer is a shadow IT assessment. So this will show you all of your estate, where cloud services are being used, where cloud services that are being used that you don't know about, and the certain SaaS applications that users are using that may cause potential risk to either compliance rules or just generally inside your business. We can run that alongside a free shadow data assessment as well. So that will also look what data is inside the applications, and it will give you a view on does that relate to a risk that could be GDPR risk or PII risk. So both of those assessments are available for you. And if you would like to take one of those up on offer, put that in your feedback form, or also reach out to your account managers or myself. Just our partner status on Symantec, we're the highest level of accreditation you can have, highest discounts, and we do have dedicated in-house Symantec specialists from a pre-sales and post-sales point of view. So I'll pass over to Dave now. So thank you for your time.
Excellent. So good morning from a very sunny, gorgeous London right now, or if you're watching this on recording, this was a very gorgeous, sunny London. Can I just check that everyone can hear me? Amy, perhaps we get a voice check.
Yes, yep, can hear you fine and can see your screen fine.
Excellent. So thank you very much indeed, Amy, and thanks, Luke, as well. And also thank you to everybody for joining today. So we choose our partners very carefully at Symantec, and Bytes are a very, the highest level of accreditation, but they're also a partner that cares about customers a lot. So in the spirit of that, this presentation is less a product pitch on a product that we make, but more of a sort of an overview of what could be possible with what is actually one of the fastest growing security technologies according to Gartner for the last two years, and what we're seeing is one of our fastest growing technologies. So what that suggests is that it's giving real value to customers. The punchline to all this, as Luke alluded to, was that we're more than willing to work with you on some free risk assessments to help you build out business cases for potential investment, or just perhaps just get a snapshot of where you guys are. So we'll go into that a little bit more at the end, and I propose that we're going to do about 10 non-standard slides. So there's only one slide in here that is a standard Symantec marketing slide. The rest is geared more towards what CASB can get delivered to the UK market. And then also we'll do a little bit of a demo to show what you would get with the assessments and what the system would look like in production as well. So without further ado, just to sort of introduce CASB. So CASB is one of the most hyped technologies for the last about 5 years. There's plenty of vendors out there that have been making CASBs. There's plenty of vendors out there that are calling their products CASB. But what can a CASB fundamentally do for a customer? Well, actually, it kind of says it all in the title, really. It can lower the risk of using cloud applications, and by that we predominantly mean SaaS applications, although also IaaS such as Azure and AWS. But lower the risk of the usage to a point when the businesses can actually use them and make full potential of those. So what that means is, if you buy something like Microsoft E3 or G Suite for a particular purpose, you can use more of it. Simple as that. So if you bought Office 365 E3 because you want to replace your Exchange servers, you want to put them in the cloud, all of the other great stuff that you could use, such as OneDrive or Teams or SharePoint or Yammer, you can use that as well because the risk is lower. So, large vendors the register is no fan of large vendors. That's for sure. There's lots of caveats to this. I would encourage you to have a look at the article on the 8th of March 2017. But what the register said was that they actually prevent users from leaking data by accident, and it's typically by accident. People oversharing stuff, and probably CASBs are going to be a must-have technology going forward. And that's reflected in things like Gartner and the IDC analyst reports that we see, where the analysts are saying that along with your cloud applications, a CASB is going to be something going forward that goes hand in hand, because it gives a single pane of glass of risk over all cloud applications that you have, and it gives you aspects of those risks in a couple of areas. So looking at the hype cycle, the Gartner hype cycle, you know how to read these, right? So on the left is no technology exists, and it's possible a problem exists. Then all of a sudden there's an innovation trigger, and a whole flurry of technologies came out. I mean, CASB, that was about 5 years ago. Lots of startups out of Israel and the West Coast of America. And then there's lots of inflated expectations. You know, we hope it could do something, but it doesn't quite do it. So lots of functionality goes into the CASBs and other technologies because, you know, largely because of initial early stage customers that kind of have particular need, and vendors tend to put those functionality into technology. Then you get the trough of disillusionment where people kind of, you know, they have the hangover the next day as the parties come. And it's like, well, actually, you know, it's kind of not too sure about this technology. People are starting to not achieve exactly what they want. And then the technology starts to mature. They go into the plateau. And in July 2017, CASB, where the arrow is, was at the trough of disillusionment with a 2 years to plateau productivity. So we're about halfway through the slope of enlightenment as far as Gartner would say. What that means is the CASBs are starting to deliver real value over certain use cases. And those certain use cases are the ones that we're going to be talking about today. So, you know, we're just going to talk about stuff that could deliver. And we have, you know, masses of customers in the world, and I'm sure the vendors do as well, masses of customers in the world that are delivering CASB successfully. And a good starting point is understanding where the challenges are. And that's where the shadow data assessments and shadow IT risk assessments come in. So what can CASB do for you? Well, I love the animation, don't you? It took me 10 minutes to do that. Anyway, number one is it can give you visibility and control over what your users are doing. So many of our customers, when we initially sort of go through the sort of, you know, so how much shadow IT do you think is being used? And quite often it's kind of anecdotal. It's like, well, you know, we think we've got some file sharing going on, but we're not too sure how much. It might indicate that people need a file sharing system, but we don't quite yet have that. We're not quite there yet as a business. So we want to see what the users are doing. And typically the answer to the question, and it's difficult because, you know, there are some applications that are more sensitive than others. So file sharing, file transfer, email, CRM, human capital management, that sort of thing, they have profound impacts on risk. Whereas, you know, web browsing, general web browsing, you know, sort of surfing, you know, search engines and advertising doesn't really matter so much. But taking all of the cloud applications, most customers think around about 80 on average for a, you know, 5 to 10,000 user customer. And what we find, and we run shadow assessment, you know, aggregate shadow reports, which are available publicly for our customers, is that number's around about 1,200. So what most customers are doing is vastly underestimating the extent of cloud application use. Now, it's not actually that difficult to block stuff. You know, we've been doing blocking for the last 20 years as an industry. We're getting blocking right. Where the magic really happens is when we're allowing stuff. And that's where the control over shadow IT comes in. And that's what is really, really interesting. When you can say to the business, as a security professional, say to the business, actually, we're seeing file sharing, but don't worry, we're going to allow it to happen. People are just taken aback because they know that that file sharing is insanely cheaper than on-premise, and it's what the users want. We see this quite often where we run shadow IT assessments for customers, and they're like, we think this false positive. You're seeing like 20 file sharing sites. How can it be that bad? And then customers start thinking through the business problem, and it's like, well, we don't, you know, the file sizes are increasing. Well, perhaps the email, the size of file that you can transfer by email is, you know, is maxed out at, say, you know, 10 meg or something. It's quite common. How can, you know, IT is not often providing the tools for a business that they need to do, you know, transfer large files. So forcing the customers to go off to the dark side and do it themselves, so forcing the end users, excuse me. So finding where that innovation is happening and actually helping it to happen more could actually be a very positive message to send to the business. IT security is helping, and that's what shadow IT can do. The other one is cloud data control, and put very simply, identifying and classifying what data people are putting into sanctioned and unsanctioned cloud applications, and preventing risky user behavior. Remember, they register, preventing stupidity, risky user behavior. Creating a link that anyone can download because you want to share that file, and forgetting to, say file sharing only within our business, or forgetting to remove it, or adding, david.barnett@gmail.com instead of david_barnett@symantec.com as a collaborator, so that suddenly that file share is available for people outside business. So shadow IT is, and the assessment we would offer would give you, a view of what your users are doing, but it can actually help you discover a lot of innovation in your business. Generally, people in organizations want the best for their business. Generally, people are not trying to steal stuff or do bad stuff. And what we tend to find is where that happens, from a cloud point of view, is where credentials tend to be stolen. And that might be an identity problem, which seeps into a sort of permissions in the cloud problem. But as far as innovation goes, do you remember the old days where the executives had the idea? And typically, they were executives that didn't have to use the product that they were, investing in. And they would buy these massive, great, typically on-premise applications from massive vendors. They'd have lots of great big dinners and smoke lots of cigars. And then they'd pass it down to the middle managers. And those middle management have to get it done, deploying it. And if you've ever seen some of the fun and shenanigans that goes on in government as far as large-scale application delivery, you'll see. And then the poor people at the bottom have to actually use it. The poor users that didn't invest in the decision to use these applications, they've just been forced on. And if you've used some of the thick client, CRM or human capital management or ERP applications that have been out there in the last 20 years, you'll know exactly what I mean. I can't mention any vendors' names, but I can think of quite a few. So this is the old method, right? Large-scale delivery, and poor people at the bottom having to use it. What we're seeing more and more is innovation coming from the users at the bottom. So people thinking, actually, I've just come out of university, or I've found an application and it's really working for me. Things like Evernote, Intralinks, DevOps in the cloud by Atlassian and stuff like that. People just getting stuff done because it's easy to do it. And what we tend to find is that innovation could have broader reach across organizations. So if marketing is using SurveyMonkey because it's awesome, problem is SurveyMonkey contains data, user data. So that could be a challenge from a security point of view. But perhaps other parts of the business might use SurveyMonkey as well. Perhaps sort of help desk type people, that sort of thing. So could you take those cloud applications that users are finding, bring them through a CASB in a forward proxy mode, so you can inspect the data, you can control what people are actually putting in there, and then commercialize it. Build your catalog of approved applications from what the users are doing. And if you read Brian Solis's digital innovation blog, stage 2 is innovation from users, and we're seeing this more and more with shadow IT. So, what else does a CASB do? Well, I mentioned about cloud application discovery and control. What we want to encourage you to use is more cloud. It's dead easy to block it, as I mentioned. If you block login.onmicrosoft.com at the gateway, and you block it in certain other places on your mobile phones and stuff, and it's dead easy. Just don't let them use Office 365. But when the business is saying we're going to use Office 365, and the security team's going, well, if we allow login.onmicrosoft.com, that means I can use the personal Office 365. And then we've got an identity problem. So how do we manage this? How do we actually allow stuff to happen? That's where the CASB can help. So if you look at the old model of security responsibility, on the left, you can see on the left there's the box with a grid, and this is actually another vendor's box. I would absolutely agree with this. I think they're absolutely right. I want to use this because, well, this is kind of true. So the blue on-prem means when you have an on-premise application, as you can imagine, everything that all the security that you do around that is your responsibility. You patch it, you make sure it's IDS and IPS, and you've got scanning for malware, and you've got physical security, make sure no one steals it. You've got appropriate controls around access to it, and that's actually not that difficult. Risk equals asset times vulnerability times threat. Your asset, your control over vulnerabilities, and your threat protection. But the benefit and also the drawback of, in particular, SaaS applications is Lots of that is none of your business. You know, you cannot go into Microsoft or Google's or Slack's data centers and say, show me where the locks are on the doors. You know, you just have to trust them, and independent accreditation can give you some comfort there. You know, you can't patch Office 365, you can't IDS, you can't scan DocuSign's infrastructure for vulnerabilities. It really doesn't matter. It's just not your responsibility. You have to kind of learn to love that bomb. But where you do have an element of responsibility is identity access management. So this is a shared responsibility between you and the cloud provider. So, you know, Microsoft, for example, could provide an identity service, you know, ADFS or AIP, or you could provide an integrated identity service that could be one of your own. And VIP is a great example of that from Symantec. And there are others available, of course, but this will give you single sign-on across different cloud applications. It'll give you risk-based authentication and, you know, multi-mode authentication as well. So you can bake in identity into an app. So if you could come out with an app to sell to your users, it could take data from a cloud application, and it could be based around VIP infrastructure. So it's, you know, flexible. But you could use the cloud providers, or you provide your own. Client endpoint protection. You know, Salesforce could provide an app, or you could provide a desktop environment protected by SET. Or an endpoint protection of some kind, you know, to protect that environment. On-premise, you know, and we're seeing this. The biggest use case at the moment is where DLP is being used because of certain four-letter acronym, you know, data governance rules, and then that gets integrated with CASB. So DLP for on-premise, understanding where the data is, and data risk and data motion. But where the CASB fits is around IaaS, PaaS and SaaS security. So looking at what users are putting into Office 365, OneDrive, or Google Teams, or Slack, or Cisco Spark, and applying appropriate controls to their behavior. That's where the CASB fits in. So I mentioned the analysts are driving a lot of this. So there's just a quote here from Gartner from last year, where they talk about the fact that a CASB is an appropriate insurance policy to prevent cloud application failure because of security. Now, that failure could be loss of governance, or it could be the fact that, from an internal point of view, or it could be the fact that you have a breach, and it'll give you a visibility and control to where that data was and what the level of risk is using. So we're finding across all industries that on average, when we do these analysis for the customer in an anonymized way, we're finding 26% of customers are exposing personal data in their cloud applications, 17 credit card data, a lot of it's healthcare. So being very specific to Office 365, because everyone is kind of going Office 365 bar a few exceptions. What the CASB can do, so Microsoft does provide a form of CASB in Office 365 E5, which is more expensive than E3, or you could buy EMS MCAS, and they provide CASB, and I'm sure that you would look at them as well. We are a Gartner Magic Quadrant leader in CASB as opposed to Microsoft, and we've put a pricing model in place, particularly via Bytes, that can give you our CASB, which is a Gartner Magic Quadrant leader, at a more lower price than Microsoft. That being said, what can it do? It'll give you visibility and control over the sensitive data that your users are putting in there, and it'll control over sharing. And that would result in you being able to use more Office 365 E5 applications. It'll control via the forward proxy, personal and work use of Office 365, which is something that Microsoft are not able to do. It'll alert if, for example, your users start downloading lots of data from OneDrive and uploading it to personal Slack, for example, or encrypting it and uploading it to their own personal Dropbox. And it will enable you to do data at rest discoveries. And if you have Symantec or considering Symantic's DLP system, you can have one single view of what is sensitive data. And I'm sure that everybody here has done lots of analysis around what constitutes data because of what's happening on the 26th of May. But if you want to explain how difficult it is. So if you are looking for a credit card detail, if you're looking for credit card numbers in something, it's actually very simple. It follows a mathematical formula. You're not looking for 10 random characters or numbers, because that'll just kick up false positives. But the formula for what is a credit card is very well documented. Already, we're up to 500 different metrics about what constitutes us, our humans. Is it the road that we live in? Is it our name? Is it the IP address that we're coming from? Is it our email address? Is it our identity card? Our Lithuanian driving license number? So on and so forth. So it's really complicated to understand what constitutes a person, and that's why the quality of data analysis within our CASB and connected to our DLP really shines. We're seeing when we compare our product to our competitors, it really, that really matters, because you have to be a little bit careful when it comes to personal data. So what that can do is it helps you understand for the last year, if you've had people putting data into cloud applications that you sanction, Office 365 or Box or Dropbox or whatever, we'll be able to go back rather than last year and understand what is personal, where is it stale, where should it be deleted, where should potentially be encrypted or moved or whatever. Deleting's good. So CASB 1.0, which most of our competitors operate, obeys the 4 pillars, the Gartner 4 pillars, which are application discovery, data analysis, then threat analysis. And threats, typically are more sort of user threats rather than malware. Then 4th is governance. But where we and there's lots on the market, but where we are really excelling in our development decisions that we've made is the integration with, well, not only third-party products like SIMs and identity and so forth, but is with other Symantec products. So if you have Proxy SG or Web Security Service, we will make those investments that you've made already a lot more insightful. You will be able to, for example, say, look, we're seeing somebody's putting data into a brand new cloud application because the CASB has told us it is, and we're going to block that on the Proxy SG before people put data into it. All of our competitors would say somebody has put some data into, Dave Barner dodgy file sharing site. We will find that before it, we'll find and block it before people put data up into there. So that's the added benefit of integration. DLP, so there's 3 levels of integration here. One is cloud to cloud, so we're not bringing data back into on-premise by use of ICAP, which is what our competitors do, most by and large. We're also preserving the workflows that you've developed for handling of data, and we can bring samples back into your on-premise environment as well for analysis later. Advanced malware protection. So we've got the SEP engine, Semantic Endpoint Protection, which is Gartner Magic Quadrant leader in the CASB, but we can also do sandboxing as well, so we can take files that we haven't seen before. And we've integrated with our global intelligence network, of course, as you can imagine. Encryption of data, that is pretty easy to encrypt by a forward proxy on a file level, but we've also developed a cloud-based PGP system called information-centric encryption that can say, I want to take a file, I want to put a file into OneDrive. It's very sensitive, so it's going to be encrypted, and then I want to share it with somebody else outside of our business. And we want to make sure that we understand who is opening it, and it can only ever be opened and viewed under control of the business. So we can delete those keys at our leisure. Endpoint protection. So we want to integrate with SEP, and we already do. So we can, because we have an agent for our CASB, but we can also use SEP as the agent, so we can spot where people are, going when they're off the network and what they're uploading. And managed security service integration, and also user authentication. So step-up-based authentication based upon multiple aspects of risk. So there's risk could be the sensitivity of data, it could be the location. If you find people are accessing a cloud application from 3 different places at the same time, and that's not normal because we're learning what normal is, then we could ask them for a VIP token, for example. Or perhaps they're handling sensitive data, so we want the owner of the data to be able to give permission for that person to receive that data. Or perhaps the behaviour of the users is starting to become erratic, and we want to make sure that the data is being handled by the right people. So there's a control aspect there as well. So as Luke mentioned, we have 2 shadow assessments. So 2 shadow assessments, and they're both free. So the shadow IT risk assessment means that we'll take a week or 2 weeks of your log files from whatever perimeter devices you have, Fortinets, your checkpoints, Palo Alto, ForcePoint, or Proxy SG, you never know, or WSS, and we'll upload them and we'll provide an assessment that I'm going to show you in a demo in about 2 minutes. Show you where your users are putting data. And the second one is a shadow data risk assessment. So we'll hook up to one of your sanctioned cloud applications. So that could be Slack, it could be Office 365 or G Suite or Box or Dropbox and so on and so forth. And we'll understand, from a data perspective, what is there, where are people federating their cloud applications with other cloud applications, giving permissions, and where, what's the user behavior? Are they sharing stuff that they shouldn't be sharing? So that's the end of the slides. I did promise you there's not many, marketing slides. I'm going to flip over to a live demo, if that's okay with you. Amy or Luke, if you can't see my screen, just let me know that I was going to carry on talking. So our system is probably the worst branded product in the market. So the acquisition was Elastica. So that was a startup based in California. Then it was then bought by Blue Coat, who renamed it CloudSoc, and that's what the name is now. So the product is called CloudSoc, although it's branded Elastica, but it's also referred to as a CASB. So the application on the left here, of course, we've got different modules that you can enable. So a lot of our customers, they just buy audit, and all they get is all they ever need to use is the audit environment and the reporting around that. Other customers decide, well, actually, we want to protect, we want to protect 1,000 Office 365 users, and we want to protect, 500 Box users. So they just buy 1,500 licenses of CASB for SaaS. Or some customers say, well, actually, we want to control in a forward proxy manner, shadow IT that we're seeing, and for example, we see that GigaSize is being used. GigaSize is actually quite a good application. We've decided as a business we want to use it. So instead of letting the users use it, we're going to buy licenses for them, control access to them using single sign-on. So when they leave, we get to take away their permission. But we want to forward all the traffic to GigaSize through the CASB in real time, the forward proxy, so that we can use it. So I mentioned there's two assessments on offer. The first one is shadow IT audit, and just there's no sort of shenanigans here. This is a live system, but it's just to save time to load up. So this is what you would see if we were to upload a week of your files. So we'd see what your overall audit score is. Kind of interesting. We'd see how many SaaS services are being used by your users. We'd see what are the top used services, and some of them might not matter that much, because you're sanctioning them. Some of them might surprise you. You see like TrustArc or Pinterest or VeriSign or so on and so forth. We could see what are the top risky services that you're using or your users are using, and Taboola is one of them. But you may decide, actually, Taboola, and whilst it may be risky, and we might want to modify the risk model according to your appetite for risk, but risk is actually accepted, and we want to call this an innovative cloud application, or because it's actually giving value to some people. Or TrustArc, we don't actually agree with what the CASB is saying. We want to actually allow this. We want to actually adopt this within our business, and we want to add a tag to this TrustArc so that we're going to, so innovative. So we're going to tag that as innovative. And it's a very good thing to do as an organisation for you to start a group within your business and IT around cloud. So what is your cloud adoption group? People from your business and people from IT and people from security, they can say, look, the business is saying TrustArc is innovative and it's giving some value to these users, and of course we can show you who's using it. Do we want to start to adopt this as an official product within our business? Eventually load it up. The other thing that a CASB audit will do, sorry, just give a summary there, whilst that's loading. The other thing we can do is compare services. So we can say, look, as a business, you're considering OneDrive. OneDrive is going to be considered by most because it's part of Office 365, of course, E3. So we're considering OneDrive, right? But some of our users actually are talking about Box, and Box might actually give other value other than OneDrive. So from a risk perspective, from a security perspective, what do they look like side by side? And we understand around about 130 things about cloud applications. So we researched these, and there's 25,000 that we've researched in total. I think it's 25,000. remember. So we understand, access and identity management and authentication, and how do they handle password quality and access. And there's a lot of stuff in here as well that relates to GDPR further down. So admin audit trails, they've both got good audit trails. 27001, is kind of okay there. Maybe you could say as a business, file sharing, you have to have Privacy Shield. So you could weight the overall number at the top by things that matter to you as a business. Then we get to stuff that could matter. So encryption keys are not in control of the enterprise in OneDrive, but they are in Box. And that could matter to you, or it could matter from a GDPR point of view. So the way that the cloud applications handle data in motion, data handling, the type of services, or even down to where are the actual data centers themselves physically located. So you can see this discussion, right? You're having this discussion about investment with your finance team, and they're saying, why are we wasting all this money? We could be buying up 2 Box because they're giving it away for free for the first year, and all they do is send us lots of adverts. And then you could make a side-by-side comparison, and you could show your finance team why an investment in OneDrive or Box is worthwhile, because the risk around up 2 Box is just too great. It gives you hard facts to be able to do that. So that is included in our shadow IT audit, and if you were to, if you wish to, have a look at your shadow IT assessment, we could give you some access to that as well to have a look at. So back to you, which matters, right? So the other thing is we can understand with the data that you provide us in your own little tenant of our CASB, which cloud applications that your users are using have been compromised in the last 90 days. Because it may not matter to you that your one user is accessing Chase Payment Tech. You might not matter, right? But remember the way that we're blurring the use of corporate and work now. So the password that he's or she's using for Chase Payment Tech could be the password that Evans is using for their other cloud applications. So you might want to just send them an email really quickly and say, we've seen that Chase Payment Tech has been compromised. Here's a link to the public disclosure on this, and that's steady to do. By the way, please change your password on your corporate cloud applications. So that's a good thing, right? So shadow IT assessment, it will give you a nice report, and I won't bore you with all the detail of the report, but it'll say this is where the main chunks are that you need to deal with, and we'll talk to you about a plan to get that done. So the second assessment that we're offering is shadow data, and we can offer both at the same time. That is around data. So this is called Sakura. Sakura is a terrible word for what actually is an API, which is an application programming interface. In this case, with G Suite, but of course with Office 365, and we I think it's about 10 suites that we can integrate with. I think the latest one was Slack. We can understand, what data your users have been putting into this cloud application. In this case, it's G Suite, and I think we've got email and also G Drive. Then we classify the data. So we look at personal data, credit card, healthcare, and finance, and a couple of others as well, malware, that sort of thing. We say, look, what data altogether have people been putting into there? And there's 55 docs there, and 31 of them, there's 31 that's at risk. But what about the behavior of the users? Are the users creating links to download the data that could be downloaded without any authentication? It's great links, just a link. Or are they adding external collaborators that shouldn't be added to, a file? And quite often, when people are leaving the organization, they kind of get a little bit more, a little bit more generous as far as creating links and adding collaborators. And then are there any files or documents or folders that are in cloud application that are shared with the business as a whole? And that might be fine if it's marketing information. It's probably not fine if it's sensitive finance or HR related information. So we can shine a light right in there. So let's just take a look. And we look at, give you an idea, a small customer for us has 10 million documents, and that would be a customer that's 3,000 users. Our largest customer, our largest customers are in excess of 300,000 users. In largest customer in the UK is way over 100,000. So we're looking at, let's just look at personal data, right? So personal data, being able to filter it quickly is simple. I mean, our system is based on an AWS environment, so it's infinitely scalable effectively. So it runs nice and quick. We could say, look, there's a whole bunch of data here that's got personal data in it. Some of it's got public exposures, and some of it's got external exposures. But here, there's one that's got 2, and it's been changed 4 times. So we would take a look at that and say, look, this document is owned by this chap here. There's been a lot of changes. So by changes, we mean accesses, sorry. There's lots of activities. We can say, look, show me the link to the file, and we'd never store any sensitive content in our CASB. We would we'd normally store a link to the file on G Drive or whatever it happens to be that we're scanning. So we're not a credit card from PCI compliant, so we don't store a credit card in there. We would say that we spotted that it's got personal data, which is social security number and person's name. From a credit card point of view, we've got credit card number, card holder name, and a card holder SSN. There's a link to the file, access that anyone can view, and then we could actually go into the file and actually change the permissions in here, but it's probably a really bad way of doing it. You might want to do that more by policy. And then here's some external collaborators. So there's a Gmail account that's been, it's got permissions to be an external collaborator, and then you could change the permissions, of that here if you so wanted to. Again, it's probably a bad place to do it. You want to do a policy with impact analysis around that. So we'll give you an idea of what the extent of the data exposure is within your organization. We can do that for free. We'll go back a month. And if you to then, put the system into production, the licensing model is very simple, and the environment that we would set up for you would be effectively turned into your environment. There's no software or no hardware that you necessarily need to install. There is some software to automate the uploading of audit logs from checkpoint devices, though, which you could or could not use. You could use your own FTP system. We could use ours. Then finally, I just want to talk about very briefly around user behavior. So we always recommend, and we've got lots of information about, productizing, putting into production CASB, and we would work with you around value realization, but, finding out whether or not you've actually realized the value you've got, and if not, then we'll help you to fix that. But usually we take a crawl, walk, run approach. So crawling would be trying just to see what's going on. If it's on shadow IT audit or shadow data, see what the situation is, and then start to make decisions using your cloud committee that you formed internally around what policies you want to put into place, and then making those policies dead easy to enact. And that's really the walking side. So throwing away the big rocks that are dead easy to, high impact, low risk rocks. So obviously credit card information in OneDrive is not a good thing. If it's not, OneDrive isn't PCI compliant. So, doing some impact assessment, telling the users that you're going to be removing it, and then remove the data. Good idea, right? But in terms of running, which is so as you get more sophisticated, our CASB system, which is unique from others, learns what users are doing. So we take identity from a number of different sources, particularly some Azure AD, for example, whatever. Anyway, the point being is we take user information, we're watching what normal behavior is. Then we can start to apply behavioral analytics around what users are doing. And then, of course, we can apply policy. So people could be a threat, or the theft of people's credentials could be a threat. So just to give you a view, we map out, for example, Steve Duckworth here. We're going to map out what he does over time, and then start to put in place triggers. So if, for example, he uploads too much data, our trigger that we defined previously says increase his risk by a certain amount. Policy violations, brute force login attempts. He's trying to log into Google Drive using other people's credentials. Too many encrypted files, for example. He's just sending up too many encrypted files. So depending on what you want the users to protect yourself against, the CASB could be very active in enforcing policy. There you go. So it's high risk. And then we could say, anyway, it doesn't matter. So that really is that then. So I hope that's been useful for you. As I say, the free assessments are there via Bytes. yeah, really just want to thank you for your time watching. Amy or Luke, are you? I hope you haven't fallen asleep.
We're still here. Thanks, Dave.
Over to you, Luke.
Brilliant, thank you. So if anyone's got any questions, now's the time to pop them in the questions box, and I'll read those out for Dave shortly. Okay, so there is one question. How much time would be involved for one of the assessments?
Oh, great idea. Great question. So the free assessments are really light. They would typically be a 1 hour WebEx with our technician and the customer's technician that would, just really sort of go through, the ins and outs. And it's very simple in terms of shadow IT assessment. It's lifting up log files from say, for example, the checkpoint device, sending us a couple of samples, and then sending us a week's worth once we're able to ingest them. And then, probably a week's worth of processing and analysis by ourselves. And then we set up another call. So I'd say, if you're allowing 1 hour to do the work at the start, probably a little bit of backwards and forwards, and then maybe an hour to present the results. So you're looking at 3 hours all in of maybe 1 or 2 people from our customer side. So it's not a big deal, and we would not install any software on premise. There's no firewall changes needed, and we're not putting anything in line, so there's no interruption to any service. And it's roughly the same for shadow data assessment, and it's probably a little bit quicker. If that answers the question.
Thanks, Dave. Wait a couple more minutes to see if there's any more questions to pop through.
Don't be shy. You won't expose your name. Whoever else asking. I think everybody's gone shy on us.
I think so, but that's no problem. If you do have any questions, there is our email address just on the screen there if you'd like to submit any outside of the webinar. So thank you, Dave, for presenting today, and also thank you everyone for joining the webinar today. Hope you found it useful. As mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, I'll send you all a link to the recording. Probably I'll try and do it this afternoon, but it'll most probably be tomorrow. And there also is just a 3-question feedback form at the end. So if you would like any further information, or if you are interested in any of the assessments mentioned today, just pop that in there and one of our specialists will be in touch with you. Okay, so thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.